It's not a good start. They dropped the camera. Hello everybody and welcome to our new Herstory segment series, whatever you want to call it. A historian reacts. So my fiance came up with a really great idea. I was on the plane on the way to Florence filming episodes on Caterina Medici, Contessina Bardi, and Clarice Orsini. And I was watching Catherine the Great on the plane. And he said to me, why don't you do a herstory segment series, whatever, called A Historian Reacts, about current TV shows, new releases, stuff like that. And as I'd already done an episode on Catherine the Great, I thought, yay, what a brilliant idea. Sorry if I get a bit distracted while I'm filming this video. I am currently in the middle of Stowmarket Town Centre. I've just parked up, put the car to one side, gone to get some dinner on a Friday night, and there's people around everywhere, and yeah, people are looking at me. Stowmarket's full of strange people. They're lovingly dubbed Stow Martians, so hopefully we won't get any weirdness. Anyway, a historian reacts to Catherine the Great. If this is your first time on the channel and you've seen the Catherine the Great historian reacts and you want to know more about Catherine the Great story, please do go back and have a look at my herstory episode on Catherine the Great. I primarily do my channel is primarily made up of videos called Herstories, which are about the history of amazing kick-ass women from history who deserve to have their story told. So yeah, please do go and look at Catherine the Great's Herstory episode because it is a really good one. Anyway, Catherine the Great, HBO's new series, launched in November 2019, possibly October. I watched it in November anyway. So we start off a couple of years into Catherine's reign, after her coup where she overthrows her husband Peter and takes the throne for herself. So the first episode is just after the coup against Peter, which happens in 1762. Catherine was 32 years old at that point, which is a bit of a stretch for our beautiful Dame Helen Mirren to play a 32-year-old, but I get it, it's fine. You want to have the continuity of the same actress all the way through, so that's absolutely fine. Peter is murdered, strangled during a fight shortly after the coup, and the murder of Peter is discussed quite openly in the series. There's no proof whatsoever that Catherine was involved in the coup. Oh, here we go, we've got a super truck lorry going past. That Catherine was involved in the coup. It's pure speculation that Catherine had any knowledge of it whatsoever, and her son Poole at this point is only 8 years old when his father is killed, whereas in the first episode we look at it's Poole's coming of age ceremony where he's 16, so they are fiddling with time and place a little bit here. My notes, I was writing very studiously. So prisoner number one, we get introduced to prisoner number one in the first episode. It's a 4-part series. Each part is an hour long. Prisoner number one was Ivan IV, who was Emperor of Russia for 13 months when he was a baby in 1740. He spent his life imprisoned after his regent mother was deposed. Mirovich did try and use him as a rallying point to overthrow Catherine, and the prison guards did slaughter him in response to this. This was an order by the palace that if he ever tried to revolt or garner support or anything like that, he was to be executed. But this actually happened slightly earlier. This happened in 1764 and not in 1770 during Poole's coming of age ceremony. But they've obviously moved it to the same time to coincide with Poole's coming of age ceremony to emphasise the threats to her reign, because with Poole coming of age, everyone is talking about how he should now be emperor and Catherine should step aside. So I get why they've changed the time and place a little bit there. One thing I did notice a lot during the series is Catherine's seemingly quite visceral hatred for Prussia. Now, it's important to remember Catherine was born in Prussia and her father was a Prussian general. Her husband Peter loved Prussia, was absolutely obsessed with Prussia, and that alienated a lot of the Russian people and a lot of the Russian nobility. So outwardly, Catherine would have to have displayed a dislike for Prussia, but it seems that in the series that extends to her personal views as well, and I'm not so sure that would have been the case. I mean, maybe she didn't like the place she was born in, the place she came from, who knows. She certainly loved Russia and loved the country that she moved into. She learned the language, she converted to the Orthodox Church, so we know she loved Russia. But did she really hate the place where she was born? I'm not so sure about that. I think you have to leave that up to speculation. Prussia seems to be a thorn in her side throughout most of the series, and that was probably true. It does show her military prowess, the expansion of Russia and the annexing of the Crimea against the Ottomans. It's a main plot point throughout all 4 episodes, and that obviously is a very important part of her reign. It also shows her as a firm believer in Enlightenment ideas, 2 things of which were very true about Catherine. It talks... Stowmarket's full of chavs. It talks about her lovers. So there were around 22 lovers throughout her reign, but no doubt Potemkin was the love of her life, and I love that they focused on Potemkin. I loved the humour between the 2 of them as a couple. I love the open nature of their relationship. There were rumours of a secret marriage, which is confirmed at the end of the final episode. Spoiler alert. Yeah, please don't listen to this if you haven't watched the series yet. That should probably go without saying, but heavy spoilers. We don't know whether that happened. That was just a nice little touch to add at the end. I think there was certainly no official marriage. That would have very much damaged her position on the throne, much like Elizabeth I. Anyone she was married to would have sort of superseded her in terms of them being looked to make the decisions, because a woman shouldn't be on the throne. Her son Poole features very heavily, and her dislike of her son Poole was very, very true. It was very real, and she certainly did try and exclude him from the succession in favour of her eldest grandson Alexander. That part is true. But what I want to know is, where was her daughter Anna? She also had a child by Gregory Orloff called Alexei, and she had a daughter called Elizabeth whose father is unknown, probably was Potemkin. So I would have liked to, I know you've only got 4 episodes, but I would have quite liked to have seen what sort of impact her reign had on her daughter. What does growing up with a mother like that, how does that impact and shape upon you as a person? I would have loved to have seen that. So talking about her Enlightenment ideas, the series focuses very heavily on serfdom and the revolution, Pugachev's revolution. Initially, Catherine was very pro-serf liberation. She introduced a system where serfs could appeal if their nobles mistreated them or broke the terms of their agreement. But her policies did harden over time, and I'm sure as a result of things like Pugachev's rebellion, that would have caused her to change her ideas slightly. So some serfs were sentenced to exile in Siberia to carry out hard labour, which was a punishment reserved for criminals to begin with. In 1775, she published a manifesto which prohibited free serfs from becoming a serf again. So she had a very up and down relationship with the serfs. Things like crop shortages and plague in 1771, etc., did not help. And I think Pugachev's rebellion caused her ultimately to wash her hands of the serfs completely. Which was unfortunate because she started out with these very enlightened ideas about serf liberation, and we do see that in the series. Catherine faced down more than a dozen uprisings during her reign. Pugachev's rebellion in 1773 was no doubt the most dangerous to her reign. Pugachev claimed he was the deposed and dead Peter III and rightful ruler of Prussia, Russia, can't read my own writing, and heir to the throne. He was captured and he was publicly executed in January of 1775. So this rebellion goes on for 2 years almost before he is captured and executed. So that was a very real threat, and I think it's important that they dedicated time and space for that in the series. I'm glad they touched upon the rumour of her having sex with a horse. Not because I like the spreading of idle gossip or anything like that, but it was a rumour that went around. I think after her death, a lot of people said that was how she died, by having sex with a horse, and that was purely just speculation caused by people that didn't like her very much and didn't like how sexually liberated she was. So I'm glad that they sort of touched upon that bitchy court gossip element of that, because we can see just how ridiculous it is. So I'm glad that rumour was addressed and kind of shut down very quickly. So here are some things I wish they had focused on a little bit more. I wish they'd discussed the coup. I wish it had been a 5-episode series and episode 1 had been dedicated solely to the coup and her overthrowing her husband Peter, because that is some drama that is absolutely incredible. It solidifies Catherine's reign and it shows her to be a badass that you do not want to mess with. If you want to hear more about Catherine's coup and the overthrowing of her husband Peter, please do go back and watch Catherine's episode. I think it's around episode 16, that kind of mark, but please do go back and listen, because in my opinion that is one of the best parts of her story. It's the most exciting part of her story, and I would love to have seen an episode solely dedicated to that and a bit more about her involvement with the Orlov sisters, because when we get into the series, she's ready to dump the Orlovs, and I think they were quite an important part in the coup, an important part of getting her to where she was. So I would have liked to have seen an episode on the coup. I think that would have been a very exciting start to the series. I'd have loved to see a bit more about her reforms to make education accessible to all. She founded the first Russian educational institution for women, which is absolutely massive at that time. She wanted to create a police force, which was a novel concept then, and I would have liked that to have been addressed. So on August the 5th, 1782, the Russian Statute of National Education is passed. And I would also have liked to have seen her tolerance of other religions, such as the 1773 Toleration of All Faiths Edict, which allowed mosques to be built in Russia despite being at war with the Ottomans at that time. So extremely tolerant lady, believes education should be accessible for all, and even serfs. She introduced a program whereby serfs could be sent by their owners to study and to go on apprenticeships and learn a trade and things like that. So I would have, as well as just the abolition of serfdom as an ideal, I would have liked to have seen some of the reforms she actually enacted. That would have been very, very cool. I would have liked to have seen a bit more of her legacy in the final episode. They could have added just a little bit there, because the royal families of England, Denmark, Netherlands and Spain are descended from Catherine, our current, what do we call him, Prince Regent? I should probably know this. Our current Queen of England's husband, Prince Philip, is Catherine's 4 times great grandson. So I would have loved to have seen just how her dynasty kind of broke off, how her kids sort of married and sort of went from there a little bit. I would have loved to have seen that. And I would have loved for them to have used at least once her official title, which was Her Imperial Majesty, the Empress and Autocrat of all the Russias, just because I think that is a wicked title. So finally, I found Helen Mirren's portrayal of Catherine to be clever, witty, powerful, vulnerable, jealous, petty, amazing. Everything I thought she would be. The friendships and the relationship with Potemkin are just adorably personal and humorous, and I loved that little insight, what felt like it could be a very real little insight and window into Catherine's world. I loved that the actors were of an appropriate age and they looked similar to the real life versions of themselves. They didn't sex it up. They didn't use younger actors. It would have been really easy to do, to turn it into some sort of Game of Thrones, everything about sex thing. I love Game of Thrones, don't get me wrong. But I think they approached it really intelligently and with respect, and they show Catherine as a sexually liberated and powerful woman who, against all odds, achieves a 34-year reign over Russia as a woman. She threatened the societal and cultural norms at the time, and as a result, her reign was threatened by that. And I think they just depicted that wonderfully. It would have been so easy for it to have been sex all the time, but I think they interspersed it so well, and they brought a real humility and sort of tenderness and humour to it, and I really loved that. So finally, yes, as I said, she did have a 34-year reign. So condensing a 34-year reign into 4 hours is going to be difficult, but I think they did an admirable job, and I think HBO and Helen Mirren captured the essence of Catherine the Great very well. So, an historian reacts to Catherine the Great. I give it a solid 8 out of 10. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. It wasn't full on action all the time. It was in some ways quite slow paced. And if you're wanting non-stop battles, non-stop sex, non-stop excitement, Catherine the Great is probably not the show for you. I found it, as I say, to be quite slow paced in parts, but there were also exciting elements, and I think they portrayed her really well. Her depiction was really funny. They made her really likeable, really powerful, and the relationship with her son so complex, the relationship with her grandson, and yeah, I really loved it. Was it completely historically accurate? No, but I think they did an admirable job. They've switched time and place a little bit. They've given some truth to rumours that we don't know whether they're true or not, but ultimately that's TV, isn't it? That's what people do. So I would say, if you are interested in the story of Catherine the Great, please do go and watch the HBO TV series, and go and watch my Herstory episode on Catherine the Great to find out the facts behind her, and you will see why she was such a badass and why she is so deserving of this HBO TV series. I really enjoyed it. I hope you really enjoyed it too. Please do comment below, let me know what you think. Did you pick up on any historical inaccuracies that I didn't? I don't profess to be an expert on Catherine the Great. My area of expertise is Tudor and Victorian England, so I don't profess to be an expert by any means. But as a historian, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I took it with a pinch of salt, and I hope you enjoy it too. So please do comment below, let me know what you think. Please give us a like and subscribe, and let me know in the comment section below which series, movies you would like me to cover in A Historian Reacts. Thank you very much for joining me on this lovely evening in Stowmarket, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Herstory or the next instalment of A Historian Reacts. Have a wonderful Christmas, everybody. They put the lights up and down and it's pretty, but I'm gonna go, I'm steaming up my windows. I'm gonna go and get some dinner, and I will speak to you all soon. Lots of love from the bottom of my heart. Thank you to everyone that has subscribed and commented and got on board with this little project of mine. Thoroughly appreciate it. Thanks for all the love. Take care. Bye.